everyone, welcome back. My name is Alicia. Today we have Ryan Morris, a 24-year-old American who graduated earlier this year from the Schwarzman Scholarship Program with a Master's in Global Affairs. He also holds a Bachelor's of Science in Business degree at Pennsylvania State University. He's now working at a startup he founded and was a professional racer in his earlier days. I got to know Ryan through Startup Institute, an incubator that Ryan and a few others had started at Schwarzman College. So here's Ryan's story. We talked about Schwarzman Program, his experience at Tsinghua, and how an important pivot in his life changed his life forever. It was when he departed from racing and pursued the education path. We also talked about his future plans with his startup as well as his faith. Hi, Ryan. Welcome to this podcast. So glad to have you here today. How are you?
Thanks for joining me. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. So today we will be talking about your life in Tsinghua as well as your personal life. So let's dive into your process of becoming a Schwarzman scholar. So how is that process? And maybe you can also talk about your affinity with China.
Yeah. So really it starts back in 2018. I was a student at Penn State doing my undergrad there. And I found this course interesting. There was a course that was studying China, and part of the course was a trip to China during spring break. And so when I saw that, I jumped at the opportunity because I had never left the United States before. And
Wow.
I was on this mission to go explore the world and start with China. And so when I got there, it was amazing. It was like going to another planet, right? I mean, of course, I've never physically experienced a cultural immersion like that, and it was so short that I felt like it wasn't enough, right? It was only a week or two, right?
I see.
So when I got back, my professor realized that how much I loved China, right, and experiencing that, and she went to work looking for other opportunities for me to go back. And Schwartzman Scholars came on her radar, and she's like, "Hey, you should apply for this. This is for you, right?" And at the time, I was studying business in undergrad. I had a little bit of interest in politics, and that's kind of really perfect for Schwartzman, right? They kind of bridge the gap there. And when I was in China, let me back up a little bit. I went to Beijing, Shanghai, Hangzhou, and Suzhou, and
Wow.
so it was a packed spring break. We were going all over the place, and we got to visit a lot of places, a lot of cities. I got to see the Shanghai Tower, and I was just amazed at how much development was there. And so it was a really good experience. But so that kind of really intrigued me, and as far as why I wanted to apply for Schwartzman. One, because I think my background and my profile fit the candidate right for Schwartzman, and then really I fell in love with China, and so I wanted to get back.
And what a place to start. Your first country being China. Can you tell us more about Schwarzman program in general?
Yeah, sure. So Schwartzman Scholars is basically a highly selective 1-year master's program in Tsinghua University in Beijing. Um, and it's really designed to prepare the next generation of future global leaders. I know a lot of people throw that term around, but this program really does challenge you to try to be and think like a future global leader, right? So whether that be leader in a company, leader in your home country, and it provides scholars with learning opportunities in China, around China, with high level interactions with people from all over the world, not just in China, but from universities all around the world. And the breakdown of the Schwarzman Scholars Program is about 45% American, 20% Chinese, and 35% rest of the world. And my specific cohort, so I was in the fourth cohort that just recently graduated, and we were around 139 scholars from 35 different countries. So we were
Wow.
we were a pretty diverse group.
Do you want to just tell us about the whole experience, about the people you met personally, as well as some guest speakers that really attracted your attention, professors, things like that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have to say that in Schwartzman, there's never a dull moment, right? And you live so basically it's a fully funded year. You live in this gigantic place called Schwartzman College with elite
Mm-hmm.
thinkers from around the world, right? So anytime I would, go to the dining hall or just, walk around the college, you're going to have interesting conversations, right? And so there was people, doing great work in NGOs in Africa, you know, people who were lawyers, people who were in the private sector. There's just people
Mm.
everywhere, people working in government before Schwartzman.
How high is the rate of having a really good conversation in a day or in a few days?
Yeah, I would say every day. I would say every time I left
Wow.
my room, every time I left my
Mhm.
room, I knew that I was just my mind was going to be blown that day, right? And
Wow.
there's not many times in your life where that can happen, but that was me every day. And you almost get like this imposter syndrome where you're surrounded by so many great people
Right.
that you feel like, oh, what am I doing with my life? But then you got to remember, hey, we're all in this together. And when going into the program, I thought that I would be this underdog and everyone would be cocky, right? But it was the
Mm-hmm.
complete opposite. Everyone there welcomed me, welcomed each other, and we're in it for each other's interests, right? And so the program is
Mm.
only as good as the people that are involved. And in these conversations, you get to learn not only the professional side of people, but the personal side, right? The side that you don't necessarily get to see in a professional setting, being, in a
Mm.
house together, living together. So you get to see both sides. And yeah, I was just blown away every day. I'm, you know,
Yeah.
some of my best friends are from Schwartzman,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they'll be my friends for life now. So it's just an interesting experience to encounter there.
Yeah, and do you realize that the rest of your Schwarzman friends they also have this, or is it just something you have?
Well, I know I wasn't alone. I wouldn't say I don't know if
Mm.
everyone had it, but I wasn't alone for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we're
How did
all
you realize that?
that I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
Um, just talking to people, right? So, I mean, in the beginning, of course, the program knows that you're away from home, you're surrounded by just so many great people. You're bound to have it. So they have workshops that kind of get you through that, and the staff are just great. But sitting down on the couch in the college and just talking to someone, we get to go deep into personal lives and see what we're struggling with, right? And that came up a
Mm.
lot, but we got through it together, which was great. And you
Yeah.
get to, I mean, of course, you shove people from 35 different countries in one place. You're bound to have different struggles that maybe you relate with, maybe you don't, and you learn through it together. But it's a tight community that has each other's back. So for anyone listening to this that's considering the program, just know that it's not all that scary. I mean, on the surface, it may seem that way, right? You're just like
Mm-hmm.
in this place that may seem to be like cutthroat or things like that. They're not. People are nice. People are down to earth, and you get to know each other well.
Awesome. What are guest speakers that you particularly liked?
We had a lot of people come through the college, right? And it seemed like every day there was just this new crazy person, awesome person that was there to spread knowledge to us. But one person in particular, I mean, Condoleezza Rice, talk about a big hitter, right? Heavy hitter. She
Mm-hmm.
spoke to us, and she was talking to us about her time studying Russian and Russian politics, and she equated it to us studying how China works, right? And she said in her time there, she just wanted to explore and see what it was like learning a new culture. And that's what we're doing. And you never know when that's going to come back, right? And be a
Mm-hmm.
great, be great for you in the future, right? Either for your own country or for the world, right? And so she said to just keep going at this. It may be um, challenging or uncomfortable, but that's the point, right? Because the world is challenging and comfortable, and that's the point of all this, right? So that really impacted me to see someone like Congress Rice give us that advice. You know this because you were part of the Startup Institute. I always say Peter Diamandis was awesome, right?
Oh
Neil,
yeah.
yeah, we. I'm glad Neil. He brought him in because his transformative purpose, right? He talks about what is your transformative purpose in life, and that it was like he was speaking to my soul, right? Like what is your purpose in life? And for him, he's such an awesome guy. I mean, for the listeners, you can look him up.
Yes, he found an X Prize and Singularity University. And the thing that struck about Peter was the thing about MTP. He got me started to think about MTP, like what is my MTP? For those who don't know, MTP is about 3 or 4 things that speaks about you. So for Peter, I think it was longevity, something else, I can't remember. But that thing that he said really got me thinking about life and what I'm doing in life, what my purpose is. So Peter Demand is a great guy. Since we're talking about Startup Institute, do you want to tell everyone what Startup Institute is about?
Yeah, so basically, Startup Institute is an incubator. Myself and a few other scholars, Schwarzman scholars, founded this initiative. And basically, we're working with a couple different partners, bringing together stakeholders to incubate ideas, right? So, business ideas, innovative ideas that people have that change the world, right? And so, the goal wasn't just to open this up to Schwarzman scholars, but we also wanted to have this make this an opportunity to reach out to the wider Tsinghua community. We did. We opened it up to the wider Tsinghua community, and that's actually how we met, Alicia. You applied to Startup Institute, and that's how we met. But yeah, we it was a 6-month incubator that goes from idea to MVP and pitching, right? Possibly pitching to investors. And so, yeah, we had different ideation sessions, different speakers come in, different stakeholders that serve as mentors, and it was pretty good success for the first year. And some of the startups are actually still working today, still going today. So I take it as a success.
Yeah, considering half of the semester we had to do it online.
That's right.
I think it was amazing that you guys pulled this off, honestly.
Halfway through we had to just go remote, and the whole thing was changed.
Yeah, it was crazy. And remember, in our team we were working across 3 different time zones, something that I never imagined myself do.
Yeah, and for the listeners, Alicia and I were working on a health tech startup for preventative health for a little bit there. It was fun.
Yeah, it was an experience where I had a taste of what Schwarzman scholars are doing, which was really amazing. So thank you for that, Ryan.
Yeah, I felt like you were at the college enough that you could have been a Schwarzman scholar. Right?
You just see me going in and out, in and out.
Yeah.
So how did you feel like when you're in the college and outside of the college?
Yeah, I mean, of course, being surrounded by so many Americans, as I mentioned before, 45% of the cohort is American. I wasn't in the college. I wasn't that homesick. Let's put it that way, right? And so what happens is, a lot of times I would try to branch out into the wider Tsinghua community, and try to talk to as many people as possible. Go and explore cities. Part of the program too, they allow us to have a couple flights for free, so we were able to fly around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they also, part of the program, I didn't mention this earlier, they do immersive deep dives. So for me, I went to Xiamen for my deep dive and got to visit a lot of companies there, a lot of people there. And so the program really does, even though a lot of people say like, oh, in the college it's very westernized, right? But they give you opportunities to branch out, right? For me, I used one of my flight tickets to go to Yunnan, and I ran a race in there, a 15K in the hills of Yunnan, which was an amazing experience.
Wow.
Yeah, and the part where I was, so I flew into Kunming, and then I went north a little bit, and the part where I was, barely anyone spoke English. So I got to use some Chinese. My friend who was with me, he spoke fluent Chinese, so he was able to help me out. But it was an experience, right? Um, the people there, they kept wanting to talk about U.S. politics, which was interesting. Yeah,
Interesting.
they knew a lot about U.S. politics. So I found that interesting, branching out there. And then at the college at Tsinghua, I got myself involved in Xinya College, which is sort of like the, I guess, an elite section of their undergrads. It's a college within Tsinghua University for undergrads, a liberal arts school, and we did something called Schwarzman Xinya Talks, where we
Okay.
would host um, we would host them at the college, and then they would host us for different topics at their college. So, for one instance, we had Chinese poetry night, where they actually had a young Chinese poet at Xinya give a talk on what it's like to be a Chinese poet, the challenges associated with it, the upsides, right, the fun, creative side, and we just learned a lot. And for me too, let me just share this, right? We After the talk one night, I was at Xinya, and I stayed there until like 4 a.m., right, in the lobby,
Wow.
just talking, eating, sharing memories, conversations. And I remember just thinking at that moment how lucky I was to be in their presence, right? And just learn from them. Me, I mean, like I said, I'm not that, I never really got that much exposure outside the US. I mean, I went to Europe and things like that, after I
Mm.
went to China for the first time. But to authentically share laughs, share stories with some of the Xinjiang
Yeah.
folks was just an experience of a lifetime. And I'm so fortunate. And they're still my friends today. I still reach out to them, video chat them on WeChat, you know? And the friendships and bonds made were unbreakable that night. Let's just say that.
Wow. Are they all Chinese students, or are they a mix of different nationalities?
Yeah, they were all Chinese. Yeah, all from China.
How many stayed up till 4 a.m.?
I would say there were probably 10 of us. Yeah.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
just having
Yeah.
conversations
Yeah.
about everything about.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because we had conversation about politics, global politics. I mean, at the time,
Mm,
the stuff in Hong Kong was at its peak, right? So that was a big topic.
right.
Just to talk to them about global perspective, right? And different ways of looking at different issues, right? And some of them, it's interesting because a lot of times, from my American Western lens, I have a certain way and they have a certain way, right? But in the end, if you talk to them, right, if you talk to each other, we both want the same thing in
Mm,
the end. It's just a different way of getting there, right? Different look at it. And it's not to say one is right or wrong, it's just a different
mm,
approach to an issue, right? Um, so yeah, it was just amazing, to see, so just to be open, right? Just be so open and not worrying about judgment was an amazing thing. And that's what these talks do is at Shinya, Shinya Schwartzman talks.
yeah.
It was an opportunity for people in Schwartzman to make friends in China outside of the program, and an opportunity for Shinya folks to get exposure to people from the West or people outside of China, right? Um, a lot of them, perhaps never left China, and they had an opportunity to get uninterrupted time with me and make a friend in the process. So it was a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. That's what I like about Tsinghua as well. You get such a great diversity, and everyone's just so keen to learn about what everybody does. So it's a really good environment to learn about different cultures and things like that. It's something that I really really appreciate as well. Now I really miss Beijing.
I know, right? Oh my gosh.
Ah,
I say that to myself
yeah.
every day.
And when is the next possible time where you can go back to Beijing to visit? Or
Yeah, at this point, I'm not sure. I hope soon. I'm hoping that I get to fly back soon and see my friends there. And I always tell myself too that even in the future, no matter what I'm doing in life, I'm gonna make it a point to visit China once a year, or maybe every couple years.
wow.
China has a special place in my heart. First country outside of the U.S. that I ever traveled to, and the country
Yeah.
I received my master's in. Right? And I have so many
Yeah.
friends now that I still communicate today, like I said, through WeChat. That I don't see myself ever not having some sort of involvement in China in the future. And
Mm.
that's saying something because,
Mhm.
I mean, the current political climate between the U.S. and China, it's there. But
Yeah.
I think the bonds I made there kind of
Mm.
outweigh that. Um,
Of course.
yeah. So
Yes.
none of my experiences can't be taken away, and I want to continue to make more.
Awesome. Let's move on to the expectations you had of China versus when you actually went there. Because I know for a fact that personally, the China that I experienced was nothing like what I expected. So I want to know your expectations versus reality.
Yeah, that's always a great question to ask. One, so again, as an American, I always hear that political censorship of free speech, China, things like that. Um, I thought that would be a lot more of a in-your-face issue than it was. Um, when I was
Mm.
there, I felt really open, as I mentioned before, with my friends to talk about anything I wanted to. Granted, it was in an academic setting, right? So people are there to learn. So just putting it out there. So I didn't feel like I had to censor myself in any way. Also, I'm a really religious person, so I'm a Catholic. And going in, I was actually a little bit fearful of the way I could express my faith in China. And I
Mm.
was completely wrong, right? I had this thought that I would have to just like hide in my room and read the Bible, or hide somewhere in the corner and practice my faith. But in reality, there's groups in Beijing that are actually more into their faith than many of my community in America is, right? And what I learned was,
Wow.
yeah, that's a powerful statement. And what I learned is that a lot of the people I encountered in China who were either Catholic or Christian, they understood the value of what their faith was to them. And when I would go and worship with them, there would be tears in their eyes, right? Because they understood the value of that, and they didn't take it for granted. Um, and I never thought that that would be the case in China. And
Mm.
for me, I was actually strengthened in my faith because of those experiences, those conversations, the people I encountered there, the people I shared experiences with. And so it blew away my expectations. And it really goes to show how much of a lens you can have on a culture, on a society, on a government, um, that is far from the reality of what happens. Now, granted, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? There's a lot of stuff out there. And I'm sure in case this is a case by case, where I was at Tsinghua in Beijing, I didn't have a problem expressing my faith and openly practicing, right? Um, but again,
Mm.
that's not the case everywhere, and I'm not saying that all sunshine and roses, but that was my experience, and it completely blew my mind and changed my perception on how people interact in China.
Amazing. Are there any any other things in your personal life that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and people are often surprised by my answer. So I used to be a race
Mhm.
car driver for about 10 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So I guess I should explain this.
10 years?
Yeah, 10 years. Um, so I be
How old?
Yeah, so I began my career at 7 years old, racing.
Whoa.
Yeah, racing quarter midgets and which are basically like little go-karts, right? Then I moved into racing on dirt, racing micro sprints. So there are those cars with the big wings on them that go sideways in the turns on dirt tracks. And then I actually made it all the way up to the NASCAR Wheel and All American Series, racing late models on asphalt. And yeah, I did that.
Wow.
Did that for about 10 years, and until I had to go to college. So yeah, I had a lot of success in it. Met a lot of great people. Learned a lot about business, and that's kind of why I decided to study business in college, was because racing is a huge business. Basically, trying to get sponsors, funding for the year, different stakeholders involved in your success. So all of that was there throughout my life. So it was just a natural fit for me to move over. But yeah, I mean, the viewers or the listeners might be shocked, but to race in the lower levels of NASCAR, it's about like 1.2 million US dollars per season. So you need to raise a lot of
Wow.
money. Yeah, you need to raise a lot of money, and that was the reason why I stopped. Is because um, I actually lost my sponsor literally a couple months before the season started, and so I had people in my life who encouraged me to go to college, and I did. And you know what? I'm glad I did, because one, I
Mm.
wouldn't be on this podcast today, and I wouldn't have been I wouldn't have gone down my educational career. So it's pretty cool how
Wow.
life throws curves
Yeah.
and you end up in different spots than you expected.
Okay, I didn't know that. And so if your sponsor didn't say cut you off, you would still be racing.
Yeah, and I often think about how different my life would be if I was still a race car driver. I don't know if I would be dead or or would have made
Oh,
out well.
wow.
But yeah, I mean, but here's one thing that I learned through that process, is that education is really valuable. And through that process, I realized I would be better able to serve the world and the community if I was educated, right? There is no downside to getting more education, right? But originally, I had no desire to ever get past high school, right? Like, I was gonna get my high school diploma and that was it, right? And go race cars for a living. Who knew that it would lead to me going to college and then Tsinghua, and getting my master's as a Schwarzman scholar, right? I never That was not in my plan, um, but it opened my eyes to China, and I'm glad I did. It's an amazing world out there as long as you go out and explore it, right? I never anticipated being in this position right now, right? Where I
Yeah.
studied in China, learned about China, or even leaving the U.S. That was like, so being a NASCAR driver, it's basically in the U.S., right? I mean, they have a couple other series outside, in Mexico and things like that, but for the most part, it's an American sport. Good old American boy racing cars, right? Who knew that my life would take this turn? Which I would say it's a positive. It's great.
It's a beautiful turn. I didn't know that you were in racing for 10 years. That's a really long time. And how did you feel when you had to depart from that?
Yeah, to be honest, it was very crushing, right? Because if you're doing something for 10 years, it almost becomes your identity, right? People know you as the race car driver and things like that. So when you have that, and when racing was your whole identity, like it was for me, it's like when you depart from that, what are you, right? And so I struggled with that a little bit. Luckily, I got into college and really focused on my studies, so it took my mind off it a little bit. But I struggled with it for a very long time, and I had to redefine myself, right? Who is Ryan Morris, right? And
Mm.
who is it to me? Who is it to my friends? Who am I to the world? And luckily, I got involved in college. I became student government president. um, got involved in many different organizations on campus, and that became my focus, right? If I was going to be a college student, I'm going to be the best college student out there, right? And
Mm.
so, and really focus on what's next, right?
Mm.
And through that, I learned, of course, that I can be more than just, a race car driver. I can do more than just win races and run laps. And so that's who I
That's
am
a
today.
pivot.
Yeah,
That's a
pivot, of
pivot in your
course. Yeah.
life. And
Yeah.
how did you, like, can you describe some of the moments where you felt like you really miss racing and you wanted to go back? Were there any moments like that at all when you were in college?
Of course, all the time, all the time. So, I mean, NASCAR is pretty big in the U.S. So I'm still a fan. So I would watch it, and then I would have these moments where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can never get to get to that level, right? I'm never going to be on the track again." Um, Sometimes it'd be anger, like, "What the heck? Why does life have to do this?" Mad at the world,
Wow.
right? Yeah, you learn to get over that. And when I look back at, in my room, I have a trophy case, and I look at my trophies, and I'm like, it was a good career. Sometimes it brings up some sadness. I see the pictures of how much fun it was, but it's not the end, right? Like, so later on in
Yes.
life, I can go back to racing if I want, but or I can continue doing what I'm doing. It's fully
Yeah.
flexible, right?
That's real maturity there, looking at a past experience and being mature about acknowledging that it was there for you when you were really enjoying it, and now you're just doing something else that's really, really great. So I think that's real maturity.
When you leave when it's not your own terms, right? So something like losing your sponsor and not having enough funding, that's not something you do on your own terms. And so that has an element of depression that comes with it, right? When you didn't make that decision, right?
Right.
So for me, I try to put myself in situations where kind of I have the decision, right? So when I stop something, it's because of my own terms. When I do something, it's because of my own terms. And they're good positions to be in, but you don't always have the luxury, right? Like you said, the maturity of overcoming that, it's a skill that you have to learn through experience, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Down a couple times
Absolutely.
in life before you can learn to navigate.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that to be extra hard being 18, 17, 19, around that age. That's the age where usually we're very strong about our own identities, and to just completely change who you are. That I really respect that. And could you like briefly describe how you actually changed your identity? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I talked a lot about faith in this
Yes.
podcast, but I would say my faith at that point wasn't very strong, right? So like I was focused on racing, not much else. So in that time, I became friends with my priest. He helped me along the way, and he showed me that you know the materialistic things in life in the end don't really mean that much, right? I mean, they're great to have. Like, money is a great tool, and you can do a lot of good things with money, right? You can help a lot of great people, but it's not the end all be all, right? And so, people around me, I had a good community, attended Bible study, right? The people I encountered there and shared my life with, they shared their life with me. Just opened my eyes to a different perspective on life, one that's so precious and you know so joyful, right? And that's where I think a lot of times we need to find the joy, right? There's one thing about being happy, but happy is dependent on what you're doing, right? Being joyful isn't really dependent on the circumstance you're in, right? So you can be in the worst place in life, but you can still
Yeah.
be joyful, right? And I think that's where the mindset that I learned through that process was, yeah, I don't have racing anymore, but there's a lot of other great people in my life and a lot of other great things I
Of
can
course.
do. I need to focus on that, right?
Yes. Yeah, that inner ability that you bring throughout your life.
It's going to carry with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm glad that you decided to continue with your education. So would you say that with education, especially being a Schwarzman scholar and graduating from such a good university, would you say that you now have a new sense of social responsibility?
for sure. 100%. Um, the ball is kind of in my court now, right? So I've gotten this great education from two great schools. I met a lot of great people. I have a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot of skills I've acquired over the years. And now it's my turn to go and do something in the world, right? Seeing my classmates do phenomenal things. Like my one friend, Norman, he, he's running the Young African Business Boosters in Sub-Saharan Africa. Basically, what he's doing is helping rural youth um, start agricultural businesses during COVID-19, during all this. And to see him, I mean, he's one of my best friends that I met at Schwarzman. Um, and to see him doing something like that makes me say, hey, what am I going to do? Am I going to help him? Am I going to do other things? What am I going to do? What is my call to help this big world, right? And so, yeah, I definitely have this social call, right, to do something. Um, and it kind of leads into, so I have another startup. Um, I am, it's a language interpretation startup in the United States, basically in Pennsylvania, where we're doing remote interpreting. So, I mean, COVID-19 showed the world that we can do things remote and we can be productive, right? Um, so what we're doing is um, we are providing interpretation services remotely, connecting them to certified interpreters in spaces like healthcare, government, legal systems, things like that, and really providing that. So right now, I feel like my call is focused on that. But again, my social responsibility is to see what my transformative purpose is, right? As we mentioned earlier, first, and
Yeah.
use my skills and knowledge to better this world, right? And that's general, but that's what it comes down to. And like I mentioned, my call used to be, and my focus used to be just winning races on a racetrack. Well, now I feel like I'm called to something bigger than that, and that is, you know, tackling issues around the world that people are in dire need of, right? And using what I have um, to better the world a little bit. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and Schwartzman is a huge part of that because I noticed now that there's I don't my eyes have been open to more things, right? I can go down the private sector, I can go down the public sector, I can go work on an NGO, and there's a lot of people in the world in need and a lot of countries that are developing, and so I see myself not tied to a geographic location anymore, but rather the world is a place for me to go wherever is needed, right? So it's kind of where I'm at right now in my mindset.
Okay, that's really beautiful because you know racing Ryan wouldn't have had this mindset.
No, and I didn't
Um,
at the time. Yeah, it was something that developed over
mm,
time.
yeah, and I'm sure this sense of calling that you were mentioning will be with you forever. You
Yeah,
know, it's not like you can unsee what you saw, and um I'm happy for you, Ryan.
appreciate that.
And what would you say to those people who are in your shoes, who haven't been exposed enough, or thinking if they should continue with better education, or what would you say to people in Racing Ryan back then's shoes?
Yeah, I would say first, um, if you have something you like doing, I wouldn't say give it up. Like I loved racing, right? I wish I could do both, right? And maybe I will one day, right? Maybe I'll get back into it. But if you have something you're good at and you love, don't give it up. But if there is another way, right? Like if there's a big barrier that's difficult to overcome, there might be something else, right? And for me, that was going to college, right, and getting educated. Um, if someone is in their shoes where they have something they don't know what to do, go do something, right? Go try it out, talk to people, see what's coming your way. um, there is no perfect path. I'm still figuring out my life as we speak, but yeah, I mean there's a lot of opportunity. I would say start with education, get involved. There's these building blocks, right? And these one thing leads to another, and that's certainly what I found. I had a really successful college career, and if I said I'm going to go to college, I I did it 100%. So I got majorly involved, met a lot of great people, led me to where I am today. Um, but for everyone, find your purpose, right? Find what you're good at. And if you're not good at something, go get the skills, right? Go get the knowledge, and it'll work out. And for me, I don't do things for my benefit in a sense. I do it for what can I do for others, right? I don't know if that's attributed to my strong faith or what, but I think everyone can resonate with that desire to help someone else in need, right? So I guess that would be my
Yeah.
advice for them. Yeah, for anyone in that spot right now.
Thank you for that advice. And I think the desire to help someone is definitely innate. It's just that, there's so many distractions in the world today that sometimes people forget. And 100% agree on whatever you said about, getting involved, because I feel like that is the only way where you can find out what else you're lacking to get to where you want to go.
Yeah,
So
and you know what?
resonated a lot.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of times fear is a barrier, a huge barrier, right? I mean, I'm afraid,
Oh yeah, for sure.
right? But to get beyond that fear is just a huge step, right? We're always afraid of the unknown, right? And life is a big unknown, but we're not in it alone, right? We have other people, and I would say lean on the network, lean on your friends, family, and get through that fear, because fear is what it needs to be conquered in order to kind of get past these barriers. So let all the barriers down and just go for it.
Yeah, and during the
Yes,
pandemic,
absolutely.
what happened? Because I know that the Schwarzman program got shortened a little bit because of the pandemic. So can you share about like what happened then and what did you do during the
Sure.
pandemic?
Yeah.
I mean, we're still in the pandemic, but
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Well, give you some context, right? It was Chinese New Year. I was traveling throughout Southeast Asia. So I went to Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Laos, and then back to Beijing, right? And I first learned about COVID-19 when I was in Laos, right? I was actually at a wet market.
wow.
Yeah, I was at a wet market when I got the notification. Um, that's kind of ironic. Um, yeah, and so I really didn't think much of it, but when I got back, people were starting to panic, right? Um, and let me just say this: Schwarzman College was hands down phenomenal in this situation. I mean, the staff were put on a lot of stress, but they pulled through on us. So they had people. Let put it in context here. They had scholars all around the world traveling during Chinese New Year in different countries, and they managed to get a hold of everybody and fly them back to their destination of choice. Um, so I mean, hands down, 10 out of 10 for their response to COVID-19. Um, I was actually in the college for a good amount of weeks. Got a call saying, "Hey, looks like flights to the U.S. might be canceled soon, so we would recommend that you leave." So literally the next day, they got me on a flight back to the U.S. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, I mean they're phenomenal people at Schwartzman. Honestly, phenomenal people. Um, so yeah, I flew back. I grabbed one bag and filled my bag up with some things that I thought were necessities. Because at the time, I thought I would be back in like 2 or 3 weeks, right? I thought I would be flying back to China in like 2 or 3 weeks, and I had no thought in my mind that it would be this long, right? So I left most of my stuff in China and in Schwartzman College, and so I flew back with things. I to this day I still don't have a lot of my stuff. Um,
Where are
so
they?
they're stored at Schwartzman College. So they because of the whole logistics stuff around the world, it's all backed up. They can't get our stuff out shipped, right? I believe they sent us an email. They may have it shipped soon. Right? I might get it in October, but yeah, they video chatted me. They packed all my stuff up, and it's stored there right now. So again, like they really care about the students, right? They don't leave you out to dry. They take care of your things. They take care of you. But yeah, I still don't have most of my clothes and belongings because they're still in China. But yeah, so we switched over to all online learning, as you did probably, right? Well, I know you did, yeah.
Yeah.
and most of the world switched on online learning. But yes, we had people from all different time zones in the classes, either synchronous or asynchronous, right? And we did it. We graduated online through this pandemic.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
Ryan.
So, but it was still cool. Like we still had a community on Zoom and things like that, and people reaching out to each other. It was still good. It just wasn't the same as being in person, and of course,
Of
missing
course,
out on all
yeah.
those months in China. Ugh, such a bummer. But yeah,
I know.
we did it. And
Yeah, you did it.
so it wasn't that bad, but hard situation.
And throughout the whole semester, we were also working on a startup.
Yeah,
So
remotely,
that's even more
right? And we were
amazing.
in
Yeah,
we were
that
in
was really crazy.
4 different countries, right? Our team.
Yes. Germany, Malaysia, US, and
Yeah,
UK. It was crazy.
crazy times.
Awesome. And do you have any future plans? Even though it's kind of pretty weird to have future plans in this time, in this uncertain time, but it would be nice to hear what you have in mind.
Yeah, so of course, I mentioned earlier I'm working on a startup right now. I'm definitely 100% into growing that. We're having good success recently on sort of the growth and things like that. Going in competitions, we performed well in those. Reaching out to clients, things like that, growing that. So definitely in on that. I see myself more global in the future. Again, like I said earlier, I don't know what that looks like yet.
Yes.
Either doing something myself or helping other people do something. Still looking to see what I'm called to do in that circumstance. And of course, since I am, 100% into my faith as a Catholic, always something to help the Catholic Church, right? I see myself involved with the Catholic Church my entire life. Right now, I'm helping grow some of the media ministry on that end because during COVID-19, we couldn't really hold mass, so we did virtual mass, and I helped with that. But not only that, growing the virtual experience of Catholic Church forward into the future, right? So working on a couple
Yeah.
projects on that, seeing how we can do that. But yeah, just loving life and having fun here. Yeah, it's
Awesome. And keeping safe
yeah,
and
staying
wearing
safe,
masks.
wearing masks, social distancing, all that stuff, all that great stuff.
That's really nice to know. I guess that will bring us to the near end of our podcast. And if there's anything else that we haven't touched on and you want to share with our audience, or the message that you want to give, you can do so now.
Well, I'd just like to say, thank you, Alicia, for putting on this podcast. I know it's a lot of work, I'm sure. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
and, providing me this platform to just talk about my life, talk about Tsinghua Schwarzman, and what you're doing is really great. And I'm sure your listeners love your content and appreciate the messages that are shared here. So thank you so much.
And I really appreciate this support from you. So thank you as well for coming onto my podcast and spreading the word.
Yeah, anything for a friend.
With that, I guess that's the end of the podcast. Thank you, Ryan. And I'll see you in the next couple of years, hopefully, in real life. If not, we're always meeting on WeChat anyway.
Yeah, definitely virtually and hopefully face to face once again. Bye.
Bye.